no renters, no rehabs, no renovations, no rodents, and now I'm getting $249 a month and 9% interest for the next 60 months.
Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where we're always looking to bring you really great guests. And sometimes when something was really great and we got great feedback and people said, hey, you got to bring this person or that person back. That is what happened today. We welcome Mark Podolsky to the show. Hey, Mark.
Axel, so good to see you again, brother. Thanks for having me again.
Very good to see you too. And Mark, tell us a little bit, who is Mark? How did Mark become the Landgeek? And what are you doing these days?
Yeah, so Axel, let's rewind the tape to 2000. And I was a miserable 45-minute commute to work and back, investment banker, micromanaged, and it was terrible. And so Axel, it got so bad for me. I wouldn't get the Sunday blues, anticipating Monday coming around. I'd get the Friday blues, anticipating the weekend going by really fast and having to be back at work on Monday. So my firm hires this guy, and he's telling me that as a side hustle, he's going to tax deed auctions. He's buying up raw land, pennies on the dollar. He's flipping them online, and he's making a 300% return on his investment. And I'm looking at companies all day long, and a great company has 15% EBITDA margins or free cash flow. Average companies, 10%. I'm looking at companies all day long, less than 10%. So of course, I don't believe him. I've got $3,000 saved for car repairs. I go to New Mexico with him. I buy 10 half-acre parcels at an average price of $300 each. I flip them online, and they all sell for an average price of $1,200 each. It worked. So I took all that money and went to another auction, and this is in Arizona where I live, and again, it's 2000. There's no one in the room, and I'm buying lots and acres for nothing. And I sell all that land. I made over $90,000 cash. So I go to my wife, and she's pregnant. I said, honey, I'm going to quit my job and become a full-time land investor. And she said, absolutely not. So I said, okay. It took 18 months for the land investing income to exceed the investment banking income. Then I quit. I've done over 6,500 deals since. And I still absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I mean, who wouldn't love to basically triple your money every time you make a deal? So I'm sure everybody listening to us, and that's probably one of the reasons why they said, hey, you got to bring Mark back. Although I have to say, give you kudos, Mark. You are way more concise this time around explaining how you actually got there. So for those people who know, obviously, that we can't really, other than volcanoes, make new land. So we have basically what we have. Although, like the last few days, you could think, well, maybe if we're getting Greenland and we're getting Panama stuff.
Yeah.
So, but under normal circumstances, we have basically the land we have. Tell us a little bit, how do these deals come together? Why are they even available? And how can people imagine for themselves to maybe consider doing some of it?
Yeah. So Axel, let's use you as a case study. So where do you live?
My residence is in the San Diego area.
Okay, so you're in California and San Diego, and you've lost all complaining privileges. So that's a whole other subject. But let's assume that you own 5 acres of raw land in Colorado, and you owe $200 in back taxes. So you're advertising 2 important things to me. Number one, you have no emotional attachment to the raw land. You're in California, the property's in Colorado. And number two, you're distressed financially in some weird way, because we don't pay for things like our property taxes. We don't value them in the same way. And as a result, the county treasurer keeps sending you notices saying, Axel, if you don't pay your property taxes, you're going to lose that property to a tax deed or a tax lien investor. So all I'm going to do is look at the comparable sales on your parcel for the last 12 to 18 months. I'm going to take the lowest comparable sale. Let's just use easy math and say it's $10,000. I'm going to divide by 4. And that's going to get me what Warren Buffett would call a 300% margin of safety. So I'm going to send you an actual offer of $2,500. Now, you accept it. Why? Because for you, $2,500 is better than nothing. In reality, 3 to 5% of people will accept my quote unquote top dollar offer. But now that you've accepted it, I have to go through due diligence or in-depth research. I have to confirm you still own the property. I have to make sure the back taxes are only $200. I have to make sure there's been no breaks in the chain of title, no liens or encumbrances. And so I outsource all this to my team in Jamaica. It costs about $11. they're connected to an American title company. Now, if I was investing more than, say, $5,000, I wouldn't take any title risk. I would close traditionally through a title company and go that route as well. But this is only $2,500, so I'll take a little risk. I send you a check for $2,300. I send a treasurer check for $200. I own it free and clear. And now I'm going to sell it 30 days or less. I'm going to make a cash flow like a rental home. So Axel, I have a built-in best buyer. Do you know who it is?
No.
It's the neighbors. I'm going to say, hey, look, here's your opportunity. Protect your privacy, protect your views, know your neighbor. So oftentimes the neighbors will buy. If they pass, I'll go to my buyers list. The buyers list passes, I'll go to a little website you may have heard of. It's called Meta or Facebook, buy sell groups in the marketplace. And then
Yeah.
I'll go to the lands, land.com, landmodo.com, landandfarm.com, landsofamerica.com, landflip.com, landcentury.com. These are platforms where people buy and sell raw land. But the secret is in the pricing. So all I'm going to ask for is a $2,500 down payment for someone else to control that property. And then I'm making a car payment. Let's say $249 a month and 9% interest for the next 60 months. One-time sale. I'm going to get my money out on the down payment. I could go 6 to 10 months out. And now I'm getting $249 a month and 9% interest for the next 60 months. Axel, no renters, no rehabs, no renovations, no rodents. And because I'm not dealing with a tenant, I'm exempt from Dodd-Frank, RESPA, and the SAFE Act, all this onerous real estate legislation. So then it's a simple game. Can we create enough land notes where our passive income exceeds our fixed expenses? And now we're working because we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah, that's very well said. I mean, on the first glance, I think this explanation that you just gave, that the neighbors would buy it, makes sense. On the other hand, I think that for the audience kind of brings up a little bit of the question, what kind of land are we talking about, right? Like if I give an example for one of our, I call them tribe members in our Ideal Wealth Grower community, who basically recently told me, well, one of the things I want to maybe try to do in 2025 is to get a piece of land where I can kind of follow my hobby of hunting and fishing and stuff like that, but maybe also in such a location where there might be an opportunity at some point to either put like a cabin or put like an RV site or put maybe even a house. So not just totally in the boonies and stuff like that. So I'm just giving this as an example because, you know, you mentioned Colorado. I lived for a while in Santa Fe and drove, you know, to Denver and to Colorado Springs and places for business. And you come by miles and miles and miles of basically nothingness. Yes, I'm sure there are also neighbors, but I would like to ask you to describe a little bit for the audience, you know, what kind of types of land, so to speak. I don't mean necessarily from zoning perspective, but, you know, between, you know, a piece of like nothingness somewhere in Alaska versus something that is maybe adjacent to maybe future developments and anything in between.
Right, right. Such a good question. So let's just be honest. There's 3,007 US counties. Where should you even start? And oftentimes I'll see people like, oh, I want to start in my own backyard because that's what the conventional wisdom is in real estate. It's a very local business. But in the land business, you don't want to start in your own backyard unless you're in an area where you're going to have a big buyer pool. So nobody wakes up and thinks to themselves, boy, I'd like some raw land today in Iowa, unless you live in Iowa. So
All
we want
right.
to focus on the sunshine states, a little bit in the Northwest in Florida. So Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, California, Washington, Oregon, a little bit in the Midwest as well. And then to your point, I'm not going to get an asset 25, 30 cents on the dollar in Manhattan or San Francisco or Denver, right? So we need to go
San Diego
out,
for that matter.
or San Diego for that matter, right? So if I've got raw land in San Diego, I'm going to go to the biggest, baddest land broker in town. I'll get 120 cents on the dollar. So to get our property 25, 30, 35 cents a dollar, we're going to go out to more rural areas that are less developed and have a smaller population. So think 2 to 3 hours outside of the nearest big city. And that's where we're going to get what I call an inefficient market, where no one truly understands or even knows the value of their land. It's truly what a buyer and seller agree to. And so when you have that inefficient market, that's where you get these massive margins that we're getting, 300% on cash, 800 to 1200% on owner financing deals because of time value of money. And so I think psychologically, it's something that people either resonate with, or they're like, wait, I don't get it. Who's going to buy this land? Because they don't think they would ever buy that land. But I've done this over 6,500 times. I've never been stuck with a piece of raw land. There's a pig for every barn. In the same way, I don't eat McDonald's, but I would certainly buy the McDonald's franchise
Right, exactly.
because there's a market for it. And so there's a big market, there's a lust for land in this country that most people don't realize.
Okay, very cool. Now,
Hey, let's take a quick break for a message from our sponsors. If you're serious about growing your wealth, you know the best opportunities aren't always the most obvious. That's why we've partnered with Bob Bernodas of Franchise with Bob. He specializes in helping investors like you leverage franchising in an overlooked but highly profitable way to create semi-passive income. And for a limited time, Bob is giving our listeners access to his course on franchise investing for free. Inside, you'll learn how to evaluate franchises, minimize risk, and maximize your returns. This course is normally sold for $499, so don't miss out and claim your free course now at edu.franchisewithbob.com/ideal.
let me ask you this. I mean, I'm kind of looking more, obviously, since that's the focus of our business in the residential area, is that we are basically getting more and more into this, what I would call the inheritance game. To what extent would you say does basically generational change play a role in these properties that maybe somebody inherited, not necessarily fully aware of what's really going on, or the obligation to pay property taxes and stuff? Because I think one thing you already mentioned could be that people are in financial dire straits. But I could imagine more and more that we also get in situations where somebody finds out, okay, I'm supposed to pay property tax on a piece of land. I don't even know what it is, where it is, what I have it, why am I the owner? How did, like almost to the extent of saying, okay, any offer just that some just don't really or aren't interested in dealing with stuff that they're not either familiar with, or it's not their thing, or so forth. So can you touch a little bit on some of the other situations, and I'm suspecting inheritance being one of them, why this even happens, that you go to auction? And then maybe if you would also, for our audience, people might think, well, okay, I get this, Mark, you're a super wizard on the auction stuff, but how do I this if I've never even ever attended any auction for anything,
Yeah, so we don't go to auctions anymore, Axel, because it's so competitive now. So we want to send out offers to people before it goes to auction. So we're going to get a list from the county assessor or the county treasurer. And you can go to a website like datatree.com / the Landgeek. You can go to like, listsource.com, right? You save some money and do it that way. So you can get the list, and then you'll scrub that list. You're going to scrub by, say, use code VL for vacant land. You're going to get rid of all the industrial property and commercial property, residential property, and then you're left with vacant land. You'll do one more scrub by assessor's parcel number, APN number, so you're by neighborhood. Because if I send somebody an offer with 40 acres, the same as 5 acres, that 40-acre person is going to send me back glitter in the mail. So I want to really maximize that mailing and make sure that it goes out. And then we'll use software like lgpass.com to automate this. So I can upload my list into LGPass, and it'll automatically send out offers. And I can actually batch it, say 30 a day, so that I'm not sending out 1,000 offers and I realize, oh my gosh, my pricing's wrong. And I can pivot in real time with that market as I get my offers back, knowing that if it's under 3% response rate, I came in too low. But if it's over 5% response rate, I came in too high. And I can use the software then to make those offer changes. And then, so that's on your front end. Then you're going to use inexpensive virtual assistants to help you run your business. And then on the back end, you'll use a service called geekpay.io is a set and forget it payment system to do your note collection and your accounting. And so with software on the front end, software on the back end, inexpensive virtual assistants, 90% of this business can be automated.
Okay, very cool. All right, before we touch on the other part, anything you see on the horizon, including AI?
Oh yeah. Okay. Before but I didn't even answer your question as far
Yeah, I
as
know. I get back to that one. I didn't
yeah,
forget.
yeah. So the estate deals are very popular. Divorces are popular. Anytime anyone's quote unquote distressed, so it's a change in ownership, it's a financial situation, it's a big lifestyle change. Oftentimes it's a dream that just didn't materialize. I've had this
Right.
property for 20 years. We were going to build out there. We never did. And
Right.
they're tired of paying the property taxes. So I wanted to answer that. But anyways, AI has completely changed this business, and it's only getting better. It's only getting more exciting. Just this week, we are going to start testing out a bot. So instead of sending out offers, our bot is actually going to call landowners, and they won't know it's a bot that's calling them to see if they want to sell their property. And this bot doesn't get tired, doesn't ask for a raise, and sounds like a sweet old woman that sellers connect with. And it's incredible.
Yeah.
That's in the future.
Yeah, I was also imagining if it would be would actually be able from a capacity perspective to go one step further, because I mean, full disclosure, I don't know, it may have been even before we ever did the first podcast, became basically a client when it was all still manual. And I tried it for a little while. And in all honesty, and this is no ding on you, Mark, it's basically my own fault. I totally underestimated the amount of time that at least it appeared to take me to get my mind wrapped around on what I needed to do and finding stuff and searching for stuff. And so I tried for a little while, but didn't really get anywhere. And over the years, your name obviously pops up. I'm reading the newsletter and stuff like that. I'm like that, right? I stay kind of connected, at least loosely. I saw that you did more and more things. So is there a way for people to get somewhat more of a concierge service nowadays?
Yeah, so we have basically 3 levels of service. So for the person who's super disciplined and motivated, think about the person that can wake up at 4:30 in the morning, get to the gym by 5 in the morning. They don't need any help at all. They know exactly what they're doing. They've got great form, great discipline. We have a do-it-yourself course. For the person who's going to want somebody like a personal trainer to help them, think about a group training class, show them the proper form, make sure they're not making mistakes. We have something called Flight School. It's done with you. And then if you are rich and you're an accredited investor and you want to become wealthy, we have done for you, and we'll manage your own land business for you.
So with that last point, is that mainly because you have developed a capacity that you could, if you really wanted to, do pretty much most of the deals yourself, and you just kind of paying accordingly, share some, or how does this compare to when you say Flight School or the basics?
Yeah, so for me, as far as helping people, I want to help everyone along the economic spectrum get out of what I call solo economic dependency, which means if they're not personally not working, they're not making any money. And so
Right.
if you have no money and tons of time, we have a lot of free information. And then if you've got a great W-2 job, or you're sick of, tenants and toilets and termites, you want to think about Flight School. But if you're a doctor or a lawyer and you've got a big business, you're a credit investor, done for you is the option as well. And so we have all the systems and processes in place that I've created for my own land business. Then I help other people, and then it also trickles down to our students as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you for describing that one more time. In this context, part of the reason I was asking is we are kind of like behind the scenes, and it's not a secret or anything, but I'm kind of going a little bit counterintuitively back to the roots, in the sense that I'm originally, as you may remember, from Germany and from Europe. I've never really for a long time felt that there would be much of a need to expand into Europe. One little thing that they have now considered is if you took out of your net income money to invest in the stock market, and let's say you were in a good position, you could have put a good chunk in last year, went through 2024, made 25%, said, okay, nobody ever got, went bankrupt for taking profits. You take your profit. They're now seriously considering not just to make you pay capital gains tax, but to make you pay social, like FICA, social taxes on your profits on capital gains. Because it's just
That's
one more way to get
crazy.
money into the government coffers. Why I'm telling you this, and this is kind of maybe a little bit of a long-winded way, is that more and more of these European people that I know, there's maybe somewhat of a language barrier, but there's also a time barrier. But what they're looking for is additional sources of income and asset protection. Okay, if I listened right at this podcast between Axel and Mark, I could get maybe 7 pieces of land.
Right.
Even if they say, okay, I don't take the money back, I don't go through all this stuff, I'm just paying to own 7 pieces of land for diversification. How would that apply? And then maybe we can weave in the original question about inheritance and too lazy to keep it.
My first thought when you're telling me this is the tax avoidance person in me thinks, well, why not create debt at a reasonable level? So, for example, I have $1 million stock portfolio. Well, I could leverage that instead of taking a profit, having to pay the tax. I could then go to a bank and say, hey, I'm going to borrow $100,000. I'd say 2% on my portfolio. I would take that $100,000 and I play the interest rate arbitrage. Then I would buy the land and I would make 70% yield, or whatever it is. It would be much higher than 2%, pay off my debt, and then continue compounding in that way. And then I could sort of evade the tax because I'd never taken profit. In a sense.
Right, exactly. Well, that part, I mean, that's actually what I'm helping them with, and will make it more official by helping them to set up an LLC in the US, get a business bank account, get like an E-Trade account or anything like that, so they can transfer the anything that stocks, ETFs and stuff like that into that. But the point is more, there is obviously a barrier. Like they would probably be looking for a little bit more between flight school and done for you. Is there, can you imagine something like that?
Yeah, we've had a number of people from all around the world, Europe, Australia, Asia. And because of the training, they could do it async as well.
Okay.
And we could also accommodate for those we have one-on-one calls, we have group calls, and they get recorded. The one-on-one calls, obviously, they'd want to be on, but they could do it in asynchronous manner for sure. And then when you've got HeyGen.ai, there's no more language barrier because we can just translate all the training into any language. And that's a very exciting new development in AI as well.
You have to give me that link because I just found another place called GNS24. They are on the verge of getting this for a meeting like you and I have. Now, in our case, at least, I'm hoping that my English is good enough to not need it. But obviously, there are people who understand English, but not that comfortable talking about it, especially when it comes to business and kind of legal, financial stuff. So this organization, and they're not, it's still in beta, so I couldn't give you the link yet. Otherwise, I would.
That's incredible. So this is the future we're in. Now we're going to have a global economy where it's only, to your point, I think the only real barrier is going to be, well, it's morning here and it's night here. And certainly you can hire inexpensive virtual assistants to bridge that gap. So I could have virtual assistants in, say, the Philippines who could work with the European and Asian customers. And then I could have my virtual assistants in Latin America work more in US Canadian time. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's also a really cool development in the context of documents, right? Like if you have somebody who would do a call, they have the documents in front of them. They might be in whatever language, and yes, you can translate them. But at least in my experience, when it gets a little bit specific, and real estate is one of those areas where there's quite a bit of terminology that is not necessarily the common language, what you do when you just go out to dinner with somebody, and be able to say, okay, well, you have, this is the translated version, and now you're basically telling them in their native language what this stuff means, right? That's really kind of a cool future we're going to.
That's a
So
game
yeah, I
changer.
think, I mean, that's why I decided we're going to probably call it Idea Wealth Grower Europe, even though I know that they have, like, I think 14 languages in 27 countries. But I'm pretty optimistic that these language barriers will be able to be overcome. But then I want, and this is also why I was so excited that you are on the show again, I want to start creating these relationships, these connections, so that, when these people say, okay, what can you help me do besides just getting the LLC, to say, hey, how would it be? You rattle it down again, no tenants, no toilets and all that kind of stuff. You just basically either want to make it as a cash flow income stream, or you can just straight out own it and build your portfolio diversified that way.
The future is so exciting.
Now, do you feel that there is going to be consolidation from people who just happen to own, for whatever original reason, a piece of land, and financial straits or no interest or whatever is going to transition more and more to people that are actually seriously interested in real estate?
I don't think so. I think that this niche is really interesting in the sense that it's just massive and it's really boring. So, you're not going to go on, say, HGTV or the DIY network and see Flip This Land. The before pictures raw land, the after pictures raw land. And you also have a psychological barrier in the sense that everybody needs a place to live. We all understand that. But nobody needs a piece of raw land. Now, that being said, 99% of what we have in our lives, we don't need, we want. But when you're looking at a real estate niche and you think, well, people need a place to stay, this is just raw vacant land, why would anyone buy this? I think it keeps that niche very, very small and non-competitive in that sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Although, I mean, I'm also, because, we are kind of in an adjacent business because it's both parts of real estate. What I'm seeing is, and have been seeing for years now, basically since I started making it official in 2016, that we have been falling further, in my opinion, further and further behind with making sufficient shelter basically for the population, right? And I don't mean
Well, yeah.
super fancy stuff, but even just regular housing of any kind. So for me, when I first started to dig into what you many years ago originally offered, which was basically the same thing, just not with all the sophisticated tools, I have always dreamt of, could you make a deal where you say, okay, I bought this and kept it, because I'm anticipating that what is currently like 45 minutes to an hour out of a medium but growing community could become either farmland, or it could become even residential property, right? Like, I mean, there's a reason that if you look at the tax return, it says land and improvement, right? So could you find deals where it's maybe right now it's just land, but there is at least a reasonable opportunity for it to get improved?
And that's a different model than my model. That's what I call the hockey stick model. So basically you buy a piece of raw land, in the path of growth. And you do some research, you could see where the highway is going, you can see where the growth is going, and you buy a piece of raw land out maybe an hour outside. You're not going to get it 25, 30 cents on the dollar. It's going to be more expensive. That being said, you hold it, you pay your property taxes, and it goes like this. It's flat, flat, flat. Development comes, and then it's a hockey stick. And
Right.
so that land banking model is a different model. I don't like it because of the negative cash flow. I want to be cash flowing from day one. The ideal scenario would be that I buy it, I flip it, I cash flow it, and then as development comes, I buy it back from the person and at a higher price than what they thought, and then hold it as development
Yeah.
comes.
That's basically it would be ideal, but I think there's a little bit of insider trading in there because
or they default, and oftentimes they could default on that property too. You could set up the payments where you get a quote unquote weak buyer on those types of properties, and and they end up defaulting.
Right. Well, but it would be a fair deal if you knew something they didn't know because they didn't care, and you say, "Hey, I thought about it. I want it back. I appreciate that you paid me. I give you double what you paid me," and then you can
Yeah.
go for a home run. But that would also mean you have to pay attention of every little piece of land that you have and stay with it, and maybe in the future, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, with AI agents coming, you could have 1,000 AI agents.
I'm also looking forward for it to basically do my email.
Yeah. I've got a link I'm going to send you. I just found this AI agent that it's unbelievable. It goes through my Gmail. There's no extension. It's all private. And it's like $20 a month. It sorts my email. It creates drafts it studies my language. And it creates a draft in my name. It connects to my calendar. So it'll schedule meetings based on my calendar availability. And it's saving me an hour a day. It's incredible.
Well, I've been working with ChatGPT for quite a while on like publishing stuff, writing articles and blog posts and stuff like that. And then recently, I made it write something about me, kind of like when somebody else would introduce you for some event and so forth. And then I printed it out and gave it to my wife and said, "Hey, can you look at this? Is this a little bit too much bragging or stuff like that?" And she read it and said, "No, I think you characterize yourself pretty good." I said, "Oh, it was actually Roberto." So what I thought,
Yeah.
So he knows me pretty well, I guess, by now to write it so that my wife thought I wrote it.
Yeah, it's incredible. And this is the worst it's going to be.
It's only going to get better. That's true.
It's only going to get better.
Okay, but Mark, when people say, okay, this idea of basically being in some way involved in a form of real estate that is kind of the foundation that everything else is built on, and it sounds like it can be much less involved than most of the other versions, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I think the best way is thelandgeek.com. And they can also, I've got a link for your listeners. They can get the book Dirt Rich for free, just pay shipping. And it'll give them a more in-depth understanding of the land business. Dirt Rich 2 is also out, how to scale your land business without skipping a beat. And I'm really excited, Axel, about my new clone. So people can click on my clone and have conversations with it and talk with it and learn more about the land business.
That's very cool. Real quick question. A lot of people in the podcast audience are always interested in audiobooks. Are they available as audiobooks?
They're both available as audiobooks as well.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. We went slightly longer than we had originally planned, but it was a great conversation again. And I'm so super excited that you are also on that kind of like taking advantage of technology train, basically. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Axel. My pleasure.